This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and it's that time of year again. We have new iPhones. This time it's the iPhone 6S and the iPhone 6S Plus. The Lispy generation, the S generation. But you know what? This time, usually the S is like, okay, they just do a little bit here and there, and not much as exciting. And it's kind of geared towards your 2-year contract upgrade, so you didn't feel really bad about the fact that you weren't up for an upgrade. Well, now things have changed, and it seems like everybody's on a payment plan instead, and many carriers have an iPhone a year plan. So Apple's also stepping up their game. These guys might look just like the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, but inside there's a lot of improvements, particularly the CPU is much bigger jump in improvement than we thought. The cameras are a lot better too. And of course, there's the new 3D Touch, which is sort of like Force Touch. We're going to look at them now. So here they are, the new 2015 iPhones, the iPhone 6S and the iPhone 6S Plus with their respective pretty boxes. God, even the boxes are getting pretty now. And the flowers and the background give you a hint of what is inside. So we got something that's more towards the warm orangey salmony color here versus the yellow for the gold. Of course, there's a black-faced one if you get the space gray and so on. It's a box. Hey, it's just pretty, so we figured we'd show you. What's probably one of the more interesting things is the new rose gold color, and that's what we have here. And depending on the lighting, it can either look like rose gold or it can look starkly pink. Now, I know a lot of you guys are very secure in your identities because you're going for the pink, and I can't blame you. It is very nice looking. I'm not sure if I would want to go with giant pink for the iPhone 6S Plus, which is our huger friend over here, as over with the 5.5-inch display, the second generation of Apple's fabulous phablet. So we just have traditional gold here. And the difference being when you see them side by side right there. So, new color for 2015. We'll get that over with. There it is. It's very pretty. It's very neat. What is even more neat and enjoyable is the fact that they're using the new 7000 series aluminum casing, which means more scratch resistant. In theory, hopefully more dent resistant too, but I think most of us worry about the scratching most of all. But one thing that I noticed is I find it a lot grippier in the hand. With last year's iPhone 6 Plus, being big and being thin, it was just slipping out of my hand like crazy. I'd never want to run to a case so quickly as I did with this phone. This one, the finish is just slightly more satiny, nicer to touch. I won't get creepy there and talk about how much I like rubbing it or something, but it does feel nice. But it stays in my hand without a case, which is pretty nice. I imagine most of you are going to use a case with it, but as ever, the design has not changed from the 6, so you still get that nice kind of curved glass going on here. Not Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge Plus level of curve, but nonetheless, it's a very pleasing looking phone with an aluminum back and a glass front. The glass front is supposed to be a new hardened glass that's more scratch resistant than the last generation, which is good. I mean, still, if you're going to drop this thing from a serious height onto cement, most likely the glass is going to shatter. But what happens more often is I think we toss these in a pocket, which is the kind of case that covers the back, and you get micro scratches all over it. So it should happen a little less soon, a little less frequently. Still have the contrasting antenna design on the back here. Depends on the color. Some colors mask it more than others. We've learned to live with it. What else can you say? Buttons are all the same. Volume, your slider lock over here. The bottom has the lightning connector and the single speaker. The speaker is louder, noticeably louder on the 6S Plus. It is bigger. It's got room for a bigger driver. Again, not a surprise. Your headphone jack is down there. And there's your SIM slot and the power button. As ever, no expandable storage on the iPhone line, so no micro SD cards for you. So what you want to do is make sure you get enough storage, and this is the same story with Apple iPhones. 16 gigs of storage is what you get with the base model, which is irksome in 2015 when all the flagships that are priced similarly or even a little bit lower are now, I'm talking to Android land mostly, they have 32 gigs of storage for the base model. Not so here. So your $650 for your base model iPhone 6 and your $750 base price for your iPhone 6S Plus. That's for 16 gigs of storage. If you spend $100 more, you go all the way up to 64 gigs. Thank goodness, at least, that we're not spending $100 to get 32 gigs anymore. Apple did away with that. That's probably going to be the one that you want. And especially if you're doing those whole monthly finance plans, then it's a couple of bucks a month. It's worth it. And there's a 128 gig. That's going to be an additional $100. So you go from $650 to $750 to $850 for this little guy, and you go $750, $850, $950. Oh my God, I'm scared that's so expensive for the iPhone 6s Plus. Of course, once again, we're with so many people on payment plans, you never think about how much the phone costs at retail, but there it is. It's a shocker. They're not the only expensive phones on the market. Of course, the Galaxy S6 Edge Plus is a quite pricey item too, but then you look at something like the HTC One M9 and the LG G4, and they seem like relative bargains selling for around $550 at full retail. Now we're reviewing the two phones together because other than, the size and the size of the screen resolution, they have the same features. And we'll cover the 6S Plus in detail first, so you can see the few key differences there. And we'll probably use this one more just because it's a bigger screen. It's easier for y'all to see it. So the 6S Plus has a 1920 by 1080 display. That's 401 ppi. That, for most of us who don't have superhuman eyes, that exceeds what the eye can see at a reasonable distance. I know we have 500 ppi phones. My God, Sony's working on a 4K phone display. That's madness. There is absolutely no point for a 4K phone display at this point. Nobody has eyes that good. Not humans, anyway. Okay, that said, as usual, your very bright 500-nit display, the iPhone 6s Plus, supports landscape mode even here in the home screen. It's a kind of handy feature. We're not getting the split screen multitasking like we do on iPads. I think Apple still believes that this is too small a screen for those kind of shenanigans there. I leave that up to you to decide whether you believe that's true or not. There is the difference, that and the obvious size difference between these two guys, which again is unchanged from last year, so we're not going to spend too much time on that. And there they are together. The 6 is a relative pleasure. And by the way, look at that. That's how fast the updated fingerprint scanner works. You would think it's actually not doing anything. Anyway, this is one of the few 4.7-inch high-end phones left on the market. They've all gone phablety. So for those of you who like a smaller phone, only Sony with the Xperia compact line still really goes for something that's high-end and teeny. So it's still eminently pocketable, even if you have lady-sized pockets like I do. It's easy to hold. It's small, hand-friendly. So we're not going to say that this is too small, because obviously Apple gives you the two choices here. Both of these have a 16:9 aspect ratio. This is 326 ppi for our littler friend here. 1334 by 750 is kind of an oddball resolution there, but that's so they can maintain that aspect ratio. As ever, it's sharp. It looks like the icons are painted on the glass. Viewing angles are wonderful. Under our studio lights, it's a little bit punishing of viewing angles there, but very good. Lovely display. As always, wide color gamut on the iPhone and pretty accurate too. So it's a nice display. And honestly, this is one of the few IPS displays that doesn't make me kind of long for the Galaxy Super AMOLED display. So there it is. Usually after I use a Galaxy S6 Edge Plus, which this one is right here, which we can compare in size to our big friend right there, both large phones. Anyway, this is a dreamy display, and you can use this in accurate color photo mode if you want, so you don't have to see the oversaturated colors if that doesn't float your boat. This makes most other Android phones look a little bit pedestrian afterwards, but the iPhone still holds up well. If I switch back and forth, viewing photos, things like that, where you really want to see those colors or movies, the iPhone does the job. And we have to do the like-minded comparison here. Size-wise, this is the Samsung Galaxy S6, feeling a little bit shy, wakey there. And this is the iPhone 6s. So pretty similar in size. You gotta give Samsung a little plus there because they managed to get a bigger screen in there, the 5.1 inch versus the 4.7 inch. And there they are together. Of course, the Galaxy is glass on the back versus aluminum on the back. Both high-class looks, depends on what you like. And of course, the operating system preference is the most important thing between these two. But this is not a smackdown. We'll have that separately. The phones ship with iOS 9. We've already covered iOS 9 separately. And the new features that are available there. And right out of the box, I got an update to 9.01, which is supposed to help with some things, including some of the setup features. Granted, over time, if you're going to be watching this, say, in December, there'll probably be some new OS version. So we don't really focus too much on the OS here. It's running on the new Apple A9 CPU. Replaces the A8 CPU that was in the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. And this one was a really big jump, especially for an S device. The A9 is a lot faster than the A8. It was a bigger jump performance-wise, I'd say, than between the A7 and the A8 going back in time. If you're doing things like actually using iMovie to export video, you'll notice that it's much faster, like at least twice as fast. Moving around the device, nobody usually complains that an iPhone is slow, but this just feels even faster, more responsive. Applications launch a little quicker, which may have to do with improvements in the flash storage performance more than anything else. But those of you who load a lot of apps, you have a lot of notifications running, all that sort of thing, who do notice your iPhone getting a little sluggish, this is probably going to help it do all those things more efficiently without getting bogged down. There's also 2 gigs of RAM inside instead of 1. Hallelujah! Yes, I know some Android phones have 3 or 4. Some of those have skins, so they really need a heavy skins. We're not looking at you, Samsung, are we? Yeah, well, we kind of are. But anyway, 2 gigs of RAM is adequate for this. I don't see it's just the same thing as with the iPad. I don't see so much of those tabs reloading in Safari all the time. It's a good performance improvement, and it's certainly adequate. Since Apple controls both the software and the hardware on this, they can actually optimize things pretty well. So let's face it, they could afford to put 3 gigs of RAM in here. They still would have plenty of profit margin. They probably really think that 2 gigs is adequate, so I'm okay with it. So just how much faster is that A9 that's in there and the help that the extra RAM gives it? Well, here's our Geekbench 3 score. 2533 single core, 4406 multi-core. Not only is that significantly faster than the iPhone 6, let alone older generations, Geekbench is supposed to be cross-platform. It's supposed to, you can use this, and we do use this to benchmark laptops, for example. And these are laptop numbers, which is just insane. Now, personally, I really don't think this is as fast as an Intel Core i5, but the 1.86 gigahertz CPU in here, it's a dual-core 64-bit, is pretty darn fast. In fact, the numbers that we're seeing on benchmarks here are the only thing that is about comparable and generally scores a little bit lower is NVIDIA's Tegra K1 CPU. Is also a dual-core 64-bit CPU, and it's been the strongest performer. The challenge with the Tegra K1 is that it runs awful hot, so it's really just used in tablets. So Apple managed to find a way to get a CPU that's that darn fast and put it in these relatively small-bodied products. Good for them. It's also outscoring, my own beloved Samsung Galaxy Note 5. Well, Apple only updates once a year, so they got to give it a lot of oomph when they do that. And here's our score in 3D Mark Ice Storm Unlimited, 27,917. And huzzah, that is a good number. Again, this beats the Samsung Galaxy S6 family, and it's even beating some of the Tegras by a little bit, and again, doing that with less heat. So, yeah, it's a fast phone. Now, we don't usually run SunSpider, the JavaScript benchmark. In fact, that one's being grandfathered out and replaced. But just for a little relative comparison, it scored 222, where lower numbers are better, 222 milliseconds to run through some JavaScript. Last year's iPhone in the 350s to 400s, that was wicked fast, as was the Galaxy S5 at the time. So this is cutting it down even further. It's just a wickedly fast little phone. Another thing that's new is 3D Touch. It's sort of like Force Touch on the new MacBooks, only, well, a little bit different and a little bit the same. One thing that's the same is if you're reading email, now an app has to support this, so Apple's built-in apps do support this. Third parties are welcome to support it, and I'm sure they will. And games will be the most interesting thing in some ways to see what they do. Anyway, if you press and hold on an icon, it's a little bit of a time saver. So if I press and hold on photos, you press deeply and hard, and then you'll see it puts everything else out of focus. And here's a shortcut to a couple of things that you might want to do. With email, it can be send a new email, all that sort of thing. If you're in the email application, you can press and hold to get a little mini preview of a link to see what it is. So it's pretty useful stuff, and it saves you a little bit of time, and it saves you clicking through, especially if you're worried these days about, nefarious web pages and all that kind of thing. You can kind of get a snapshot without actually going there. So that works in the Mail program. It does not currently work in the Gmail program. It's up to Google to support that. Most likely, I think that they will. There's actually more too. Besides the double press multitasking with the new look right there, there's a press and hold. It makes it easier to switch between your last two used apps. So if you're like copying and pasting or looking up a reference, you got to press and hold on the side here and see, you can just go back and forth like that too. So it's interesting, where Apple used to be kind of married to skeuomorphism, which means things that look like objects in the real world, like a notebook that looks like a notebook, all that sort of thing. They've finally thrown that all away, and they're getting into new user interface paradigms that are thoroughly modern and don't depend on our knowledge of how to operate old-fashioned objects in the physical world. Some people are saying this is an absolute game changer and every phone is going to be different because they're all going to do this. I don't know if that's true, but it's a nice added touch. It's clever. It's a time saver. And once you get used to it, it's going to be kind of weird when you go to some other device that doesn't support it. And you're like, wow, that didn't work, did it? It's not hard to actually do the old kind of press and hold. Like if you want to, move your icons around, you can still do it. You just don't press that hard. Don't press until it blurs. It's just a normal light press, and then you can do your delete and all that sort of thing. So that still exists. No problems there. Cameras. Finally, big changes in the cameras too. The front camera, the FaceTime camera as it's called, went from 1.2 megapixels to 5 megapixels, which is competitive with other flagship phones on the market. Apple is not exceeding anybody's specs when it comes to that, but it's a welcome addition, and it's not overly wide angle, which is nice because you get more flattering selfies that way. Your ears suddenly don't become mondo huge or something like that in a profile. It's sharper, it's clearer, and we'll throw up some sample photos, including one with the front camera, so you can see what I mean. All the usual features here are like HDR. We have this new little, you can turn on what they call live. So when you take a photo, it's sort of like a copy of HTC Zoe, and Nokia also had this feature too. What it does is it records a little bit before and after, and it creates a kind of little animated photo, which is a pretty subtle effect. We'll show you what that looks like in a minute. I don't know. It doesn't exactly change my world. It's up to you. We still have Auto HDR here, the same simple Apple interface, and the switching slider between video, slow motion, square, pano, that doesn't rotate to landscape view, so you just have to think about the world a little bit sideways. Quick shortcut to gallery. You can tap to focus. There's our Auto HDR. It's fast as ever. Also new for the camera is 4K video recording. Yay, finally. And it's really very good looking. It and the Galaxy S6 family take the best 4K video I've seen. And honestly, I give a little edge to the iPhone for looking natural, which means more like a standalone camera would take. It's just really good stuff. And we're going to splice some footage in, downsampled to 1080p, so it's going to match the rest of our stream so you can see what it looks like. It's very nice. And if you want to see the little live effect that I was talking about, the wiggly thing, watch as I switch. This is obviously a static photo. You'll just see it at the very beginning. See the photo, the flowers wiggle there? I don't know. Wiggly flowers, we can have fronds blowing in the wind depending on what the picture is. When I switch to this one, you can see the actual fronds wiggly. You gotta be quick to catch that. Slow motion video, once again, is here. By default, it records at 720p and 240 frames per second, and it starts out fast, so you can tell the difference when it goes slow. So we're going to show you on the phone, because sometimes, if you manipulate these files and send them elsewhere, you don't see the effect anymore. What better to test than running water? There it is, nice and slow. You don't have to have a $1,000 Sony RX100 Mark IV to get a little slow-mo love going on here. That's actually pretty decent quality. So next we're going to show you some sample photos and some video, and we're going to have a comparison also, 100% crop between the iPhone 6 and 6S. So you can see the difference in quality between the two. There actually is, because when you're adding 50% more pixels, the resolution, you're going to get more detail in photos. So that's a good answer to, again, the Samsung Galaxy S6 family, the LG G4, those that have really good cameras on them, usually 16 megapixel, where you could say the iPhone was nice, but once you start cropping photos, things kind of fell apart, didn't look sharp enough. At 12 megapixels now on the rear camera, we're talking something that's actually certainly more than good enough for posting on social networking, for your Instagram, love, Facebook, and even for putting on your website, if you have a personal website. And some people even use these for business. Imagine that. Now for your book reading types, of course, there's Apple's iBooks, there's Kindle, there's everything available for the iPhone. And if you try and pick between the screen, I'm going to tell you right now, the 6S Plus with the larger display, more text on screen, higher resolution is going to be really the more pleasant read. We have iBooks open over here, we have Kindle. And by the way, this is a new novel by our senior editor, Tong Zhang, called Accidental Killer. It's available on Kindle. It's really a very awesome high-tech mystery thriller. You should go check it out. And you see the difference in the text right there, how much you're going to get to read on the page. Now, you can make this bigger if you want to, but I would say if you're reading books, boy, the bigger screen is the way to go. And now for video playback, we're using our own YouTube videos here. This happens to be the Huawei smartwatch. And we'll show you what the difference is experiencing video on both of these. And also the speaker volume. Both of these are set to 50%. First, we'll do the big guy. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and smartwatches are only just beginning. Here is what I would call really... And now the little guy. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and smartwatches are only just beginning. Here is what... Both of these have nice, clear audio. The bigger one, obviously, is going to be a bit louder. Both of these are... Well, you know, one speaker firing from the end, that's all there is. Sorry, no front-facing loudspeakers here, but both a very good experience. And the point here also being that both of these are 16:9 widescreen phones. Unlike iPads that are still 4:3 aspect ratio, you're getting widescreen, so you don't have to worry about any black bars. Lastly, these have both gotten just a hair thicker, 0.2 millimeters thicker than their predecessors, and a couple of grams heavier, just a little bit. And that's because of the 3D touch screen. So I guess Apple is willing to stop making things skinnier and skinnier when they can add new features instead. So good times there. That also reduced the battery capacity ever so slightly on these, but not by very much. And the A9, despite the fact that it's significantly faster, is also more power efficient. And there's also a new low power mode that you can put it in if you're getting down to your last percentage of the battery life. It can save you about an hour on the tail end of life. But anyway, battery life is about the same on these as it was before. I know with the iPhone 6 and 6S, probably it's going to be the same thing. Everybody's going to wish that this lasts a little bit longer. If you're a moderate user, this is going to be something that you're going to charge every night for the little one. For the bigger one, with its significantly larger battery, it's got the space for it, so Apple took advantage of that. This guy's a real Energizer bunny, and you go a day and a half, 2 days probably, without having to charge this one again. So that's the iPhone 6S, pretty in pink, perhaps, and this is the iPhone 6S Plus. Of course, either of these is available in any of the colors that Apple sells if you like. You can have your giant pink salmon slab, or you can go with the, well, filet of chicken slab like I went with here. And of course, our little friend is in pink. Still a gorgeous looking phone, still beautifully made phone, still very easy to use and secure as operating systems go. All these things stand in favor of Apple. Now I know you Android haters are going to spam the comments and, hey, I love Android too, and I use Android actually more than I use iOS, but you got to say these are actually very nice phones. Expensive? Sure, but a pleasure to use as always, and nice improvements over the last generation too. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button. Remember, you're voting for the video and not for the product. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full written review and subscribe to our YouTube channel.